Every championship stadium ranked from worst to best. Let's go. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. I always enjoy doing this one each year. The important thing to remember is that this list is completely subjective and it's fine to disagree with me. Get all your thoughts in the comments down below. If we could hit 350 likes on today's video, that would be massively appreciated. But yeah, don't take this one all too seriously. At the end of the day, this one is just for a little bit of fun. Without any further ado, let's jump into this one. We're going worst to best. 24th on the list, we have the Vitality Stadium. Apologies to Bournemouth fans. It's just really small, isn't it? It comes in as the second smallest stadium in the Championship this season with a capacity of just over 11,300. Interestingly enough, Bournemouth fans will be paying the most for their tickets next season. They've got the most expensive season tickets. If you've not seen that video we did a couple of weeks ago, make sure to go and check it out. But yeah, it's just the scale of this one that has Bournemouth down there, really. 23rd on today's list, we are then going to have Kenilworth Road, home of Luton Town. Now, this does come in as the smallest stadium in the Championship this season with a capacity of just over 10,300. Now, despite being the smallest and maybe looking a little bit rough around the edges, a little bit run down in some areas, there's still an element of charm about Luton, which is why I've not put it rock bottom of this list. I know that Luton have plans with their sort of future endeavours with their stadium and things like that, but as it is currently, 23rd on the list. 22nd on today's list, we're then going to have the London Road Stadium, home of Peterborough United. Now, this is one that I've never been to be fair. There are a few on today's list that I've not been to. Most of the sort of London-y clubs and the two Welsh clubs are pretty much the majority of the ones that I'm still yet to go to, but the rest I've pretty much done them all. For this one, it's another fairly small one with a capacity of around 15,000, although I have seen that they have got plans to go ahead and develop a new stadium, which has sort of been in the works since around about 2018. 21st on the list, we then have Bloomfield Road, home of Blackpool. Now, this is a stadium which I have been to plenty of times, and to be fair, the ground has improved significantly since like back in like 2008 or something like that, when they only had like 2 proper stands and behind the goal was a car park. I think the away end is the bit here that sort of lets this one down. It was installed as a bit of a temporary stand at the time, so I'm not sure what the plan is and if it is to, you know, carry on developing it and stuff like that. But yeah, on personal preference, Blackpool 21st for me, which probably isn't, you know, much of a surprise coming from a Preston fan. 20th on the list, we're then going to have the Madejski Stadium, home of Reading. Now, this is a fairly big one to be this low down in the list. It holds just over 24,000. However, you've seen, you know, me do these videos over the years. If a stadium's not got that sort of character and it's a little bit sort of just generic-y, which I feel like the Reading Stadium is a little bit, then it probably knocks it down a few tiers for me. I think I am more of a fan of those sort of traditional stadiums and things like that. I know that Reading fans get a bit of stick for the atmosphere and stuff like that, but when I went with North End, it wasn't all too bad, to be fair. But in terms of the stadium itself, I'm not particularly the biggest fan. 19th place, and this may be a bit of a controversial placing, but I'm gonna go for the Den. Now, in terms of, like, you know, the Den being a bit of an iconic one, with the atmosphere and stuff like that, I completely get all of that. But in terms of like the actual stadium design and what I think of it, it doesn't completely do it for me. It's not a bad stadium, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good ones that are going to come in after this. But Millwall are another one of those clubs who have had plans over the last few years to sort of redevelop it and stuff like that. And so as it is right now, it doesn't completely do it for me. Coming in 18th place, we're then going to have the KCOM, home of Hull City. Now, it's got a decent capacity, holding over 25,000. But it's another one of those sort of like bowl-shaped stadiums. I do prefer this one to the Reading ground, though. I think it's got a little bit more uniqueness to it. I do remember going to a bit of a dodgy pub last time I went to Hull away, but no, I don't mind this one all too much, to be honest with you. I think I've just got bad memories from it because Jarrod Bowen absolutely ripped apart North End last time I went. But yeah, around 18th I'd have this one probably. 17th place, we then got the Kian Prince Foundation Stadium, home of QPR. Now, by no means is this the sort of biggest stadium in the Championship. It holds just over 18,000, but with how unique this one is, you know, with everyone sort of packed into this one, with how it feels like you're sort of on top of the pitch and things like that, that. There's a lot of redeeming factors about this stadium which I quite like. You know, we are sort of into the realms now on this video where I don't particularly mind any of these grounds. 16th place we then have Oakwell, home of Barnsley. Now the biggest factor for this one is the away end is absolutely massive, and that can be so important for away days. You know, when you can take loads of people travelling away, you can get a packed out away end and stuff like that. That can make absolutely all the difference, and behind the goal there looks fantastic. The only sort of thing that lets this stadium down is that one smaller stand compared to the other three. If a bit of work was done there, then this one could have been pushed up even higher. Coming in 15th place, we then got the Liberty, home of Swansea City. Now for a modern ground, I don't particularly mind this one, but it's another one which I'm still yet to get to. I really need to go to Swansea eventually. I think despite it being one of those like modern stadiums, there is a certain amount of uniqueness to it with the sort of two-tier system that it's got going on around it. I like the sort of design patterns that they got going on around the seats as well. So yeah, not all too bad. 14th place, I'm then going to go for Ewood Park, home of Blackburn Rovers. More of a traditional stadium, which is coming in next. The only thing that really lets this one down for me is probably the Riverside stand, which sort of is a little bit smaller than the other three. But once again, similar to how we were talking about Barnsley, if we're talking about away ends in the Championship, Blackburn can be absolutely fantastic for that. You know, when they give you that full stand behind the goal. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that one. Sort of like right next to a river as well. It's not bad, Ewood Park. Coming in 13th place, I'm then going to go for St Andrews, home of Birmingham. There's just something about this stadium that always gets me. If I was ranking away days, sort of in terms of how good the full day is, sort of around the area and stuff like that, what you can do and things, and not purely based on the stadium, then I'd have Birmingham right up there, because as an away day, I absolutely love it. But going off purely the stadium, I think I'd have it around mid-table in the Championship, I think, for me. It is one of the bigger grounds in the league, holding over 29,000 people. It's a good away end that you get there. It ticks a lot of boxes, but there is still that one stand that sort of lets it down a little bit. Coming in at the midway point, we're then going to have the Ricoh Arena, home of Coventry City. Now, for once again a fairly modern stadium, I don't mind the look of this one. The sky blue seats on a sunny day. It is also one of the biggest stadiums in the Championship, with it holding over 32,000 people. The only problem is that if you're not sort of like selling out that at like near capacity, it can come across there's just a little bit empty then, which is the problem. But it's another one that I've not got to yet, so I'll need to get to that one eventually. Next up then, we are going to have the Riverside Stadium, home of Middlesbrough, which is conveniently next to a river. I remember telling this story last time I did this video, but I vividly remember going to a bit of a dodgy pub last time I went to Middlesbrough away, and I want to make it my mission to go back there one day when I'm next at Middlesbrough away. But it's a fairly decent stadium for what it is. It is actually the biggest stadium in the Championship going into next season, with a capacity of 34,700. But just because it's the biggest doesn't mean it's the best. Next up we then have the Cardiff City Stadium, which is quite similar in many ways to the Ricoh Arena. It's just got that extra tier added on to one of the sides, which does give it a little bit more in terms of capacity. This one goes ahead and holds just over 33,000. So it is one of the biggest grounds in the Championship and is fairly sleek looking for a modern ground. Next up then we have the John Smith Stadium, home of Huddersfield Town. Now this one just has something about it that I quite like. As an away day, I quite enjoy Huddersfield, and I think that the design factor of this one and how it is a little bit funky and unique, you know, with sort of the curved roofs on there. It's got the floodlights as well, the sort of proper ones on each corner. It's a good away end there, and I just quite like this one. Coming in 8th on the list, we then have the Bet365 Stadium, home of Stoke City. Now, I've changed my opinion slightly on this one since I've actually been to Stoke away, and I got to say I enjoyed it quite a lot, to be honest with you. I think it's a good away day, it's a nice stadium. You can get a sort of decent atmosphere generated in there. Outside of the stadium's quite nice. It's also fairly big as well, holding over 30,000 people. Coming in 7th place, we're then going to have Bristol City's Ashton Gate. This one is really quite nice. They've done a lot of sort of redevelopment work on this stadium over the past few seasons. I think they've done it quite a good job of it, actually. You know, you always run the risk when you're doing these sort of stadium redevelopments that you can sort of lose the sort of character that the original ground had. But they've modernised it in quite a nice way. Outside the stadium, there looks like there's quite a bit to be doing as well. It holds 27,000 people in there now. Yeah, big fan of that one. Coming in 6th place, we're then going to have Pride Park, home of Derby County. To be honest with you, this one is pretty much, for me, like a better version of Middlesbrough Stadium. They sort of copied Middlesbrough and just made it a little bit better. It's a little bit more modern, obviously. It was built more recently than the Borough Ground. There's bits to do around the stadium. When it gets full, you can get a great atmosphere going there, and yeah, good away day. Coming in 5th place, and this is where people are going to kick off, but I'm putting Deepdale as high as 5th on today's video. If it was purely up to me, I'd probably put it first, but I get absolutely crucified in the comments down below. Guys, I just love Deepdale Stadium, and we're going to talk about the negatives because there are negatives to this one. Atmosphere and attendances aren't great, we're just going to throw that out there. But when it comes to the actual stadium design itself, the history behind Deepdale, the uniqueness factor to it, the design pattern on each of the stands, Deepdale under the floodlights is just a sight to behold. And it's probably just me being from Preston and going to this ground, you know, regularly, sort of every week when I could. But if you don't love your own stadium, what's the point? Now, I've got to say, I love a bit of Deepdale. Coming in 4th place, we're then going to have the Hawthorns, home of West Brom. Now, when I went here, I watched Preston get absolutely battered, but regardless of that, it is a pretty nice stadium. It holds over 26,000. Attendances are very good here as well, so you know you're going to be getting a good atmosphere when you're going and stuff like that. The only gripe I've got with it is the away end is a little bit small. Like, that's the thing with Deepdale, you can get a massive away end there. With West Brom, it's a little bit smaller. Coming in 3rd place, now this top 3 was difficult to separate. Trust me, there's really not a lot between these 3, but coming in 3rd, we're then going to have the City Ground, home of Nottingham Forest. Now, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know just how much of a fan I am of the City Ground. I think it's absolutely great. There's so much to like about this stadium. I was in Nottingham only the other weekend, and it's just a great city. It's got a nice charm about it, you know, right next to the River Trent. So there's a nice walk over to the ground. The stadium itself, I think, is absolutely lovely. Overall, it's just a top-end championship stadium. Coming in 2nd place, we then have Bramall Lane, home of Sheffield United. Now, this is another one similar to the City Ground that I've been to absolutely loads and is right up there in terms of my favourite away days and my favourite stadiums for the championship. I think it's absolutely great. It's got loads of tradition and uniqueness about it, but at the same time it doesn't quite feel like it's like falling apart like other sort of like old school grounds and stuff like that. Great away day, great stadium. It just falls short of that number 1 spot, which means coming in as the number 1 and the best stadium to me, it does go to Fulham's Craven Cottage. It just is absolutely quality, isn't it? And with what they're doing to it at the moment, with the sort of stadium redevelopment of that stand and what that's going to look like when it's finished, this one just is great. Like, you can take the mick out of Fulham for having, like, I don't know, clappers and a neutral end and all that sort of stuff. Craven Cottage is top tier. But there we have it, guys. Those are my rankings of championship stadiums from worst to best, what I currently think of all of them. Let me know down below how much you disagree with all my suggestions. I'm sure we're going to get loads of debates going in the comments down below. But if you did enjoy today, make sure to leave a like. If we could hit 350, that would be massively appreciated. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.